Hi everyone, I'm Helen from Susan's family. Today I'm bringing you the Cozy Critters bear version. It's divided into two main parts, the main part and decorations. First, crochet the main part. Once completed, make the decorations and attach them. Let's start crocheting the main part. Begin with a chain stitch, then work in rounds for a section. After that, work back and forth. Let's take a look at the chart. In the chart, R plus number indicates the round number. H plus number indicates the row number. The increases and decreases explanation column shows the stitch techniques needed when crocheting the current round. It also explains the increasing or decreasing situation. The total stitches column shows the total number of stitches. After completing all stitches in the current round, the stitches used include chain, CH, F double crochet, FB double crochet increase, and slip stitch. Next, watch me demonstrate the specific crocheting method. The yarn used for the main part here is special. This yarn has longer fibers. It's hard to see the stitches clearly when crocheting. I'll first demonstrate the crocheting method using cotton yarn. Then I'll explain the using the corresponding yarn. You can learn the method first, or practice with yarn that's easier to watch. After learning, use the corresponding yarn for crocheting. Also, the yarn color here is random. For specific yarn, color scheme and hook size, refer to the detail page of our product and paper instructions. First, cast on. The chart shows 3ch, indicating the cast on method is foundation chain. Then cast on 3 stitches. Let's start with foundation chain. Pick up the yarn with your right hand. Wrap it around your left little finger once. Pass through between middle finger and index finger. Pinch the yarn tail with your left thumb and middle finger. Pick up the crochet hook with your right hand. The hook moves between these 2 points. Position the hook underneath the yarn. Wrap the yarn counterclockwise. Pinch the crossing point of the loop with your left thumb and middle finger. Then position the hook to the left of the yarn. Wrap the yarn counterclockwise. Pull through the loop. Tighten the yarn tail. Note: keep the loop on the hook slightly loose for easier crocheting later. This slip knot does not count as a stitch. You can also start with a slip knot method. Cross the yarn tails. Then from underneath the loop, pull the yarn through. Then place the slip knot loop onto the hook. Adjust slightly. Hang the yarn with your left hand using the previous method. Now begin crocheting chain stitches. Yarn over. Pull through. 1 chain stitch is done. On this chain stitch, pick the V-shaped loop side. Pick up both strands of the chain stitch. Place a stitch marker to mark it. Continue yarn over. Pull through. This is the second stitch. We need to crochet 3 stitches here in total. Crochet 1 more stitch. Now the starting chain is completed. Each braid here represents 1 stitch. The loop on the hook is not counted in the stitch count. The starting chain explanation is complete. Begin the first round. R1 is DC and the third chain from hook, 12 DC. It means starting to crochet from the third chain from the end. The number before DC indicates how many double crochets to make. Here it means to crochet 12 double crochets. First find the position of the third chain from the end. Actually, it's the first chain stitch of the starting chain. Count from right to left to verify. 1, 2, 3. It's still this chain stitch. Then we place the marker in the chain space. Work 1 double crochet, first the loop on the hook. That is, pick up this braid. Place a stitch marker to mark it. Pay attention, don't include the working yarn when placing the marker. Next, yarn over once. Insert into the corresponding position. Yarn over and draw through. There are 3 loops on the hook now. Yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops. 2 loops remain. Continue to yarn over and draw through in once. The double crochet is completed. Here is the marker spot. The V-shaped loop is the stitch of the double crochet. 1 stitch represents 1 stitch. Continue to pick up the same position below. Crochet 11 double crochets. I'll demonstrate the technique for double crochet again. Yarn over. Insert. Yarn over and draw through. Then yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops. Repeat twice. Once. Twice. Complete the double crochet. Continue crocheting 10 double crochets next. One stitch. Two stitches. Three stitches. Nine stitches. 10 stitches. Adding the previous 2 stitches. A total of 12 double crochets completed. Check the stitch count after finishing. The stitch pattern corresponding to the chart is now complete. Remove the stitch marker at the insertion point. Finally, at the stitch of the first double crochet, Which is the position marked by the stitch marker? Work 1 slip stitch to join. Insert the hook. Yarn over and pull through. Pull through all loops on the hook in one go. Complete the slip stitch. The braid on the upper right. Is the chain formed by the slip stitch? The slip stitch doesn't count as one stitch. Tighten its braid. Pull tight the loop on the hook. This makes the right side braid smaller. The slip stitch is not indicated in the form. When crocheting in rounds, always finish by joining with a slip stitch and pull tight. Leave the starting yarn tail for now. It helps to distinguish the right side from the wrong side. The side with the starting yarn tail is the wrong side. The stitch texture is also relatively blurry. The opposite side is the right side. The first round is complete. Next, crochet round 2. R2 is 2CH, 12 DC2 in 1. DC2 in 1 means double crochet increase, the number before it indicates how many double crochet increases to make. Here it means to make 12 double crochet increases. Pick up the yarn from the previous round. Start with 2 chain stitches as the beginning chain. 1, 2. The turning chain doesn't count as one stitch. It's not included in the total stitch count. Then place a marker on the entire loop on your hook. After completing the corresponding stitches, the marker position will exactly be at the stitch position of the corresponding stitch. Pick up the marker position from the previous round. At the spot where you previously joined with a slip stitch, work a double crochet 2 in 1. That means making 2 double crochets in one position. One stitch. At this point, the marker marks the stitch position. Continue crocheting 2 stitches. Complete the double crochet increase. You can remove the marker here. Continue picking up the left stitch afterward. Work a double crochet 2 in 1. After completing, you'll need to work 10 more double crochet increases downward. Follow the method of making 2 double crochets in each stitch. Complete the last double crochet increase. Check the stitch count. Remember the turning chain doesn't count as one stitch? The total stitches for each round are clearly marked in the corresponding chart. I won't mention this again later. Finally, at the marked position, work 1 slip stitch to join. Insert the hook. Yarn over and draw through. Pull through all loops on the hook in one go. Complete the slip stitch. Similarly, tighten the braid. The second round is complete. Work round 3 downward. Chain 2 to begin. The following chart shows FFV x12. The parentheses here indicate a group. Multiply by the number indicates the number of times to repeat the pattern. Work 1 double crochet. Pay attention to mark before crocheting. Pick up loops, and mark before working each stitch afterward. I won't remind repeatedly from now on. Insert into the marked stitch of the previous round and crochet accordingly. Remove the stitch marker after completing it. Work 1 double crochet 2 in 1 next. FFV is completed. I'll demonstrate once more. Work 1 double crochet. Then work 1 double crochet 2 in 1. This is the second time. Repeat FFV 10 more times afterward. Always follow the method of 1 double crochet and 1 double crochet 2 in 1. Finally, pick up the marked position and join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The third round is complete. Now work the fourth round. Chain 2 to begin. Crochet the stitch pattern inside the parentheses. Work 1 double crochet. Then work 1 double crochet 2 in 1. Work 1 more double crochet afterward. FFV F is completed. I'll demonstrate again. 1 double crochet. 1 double crochet 2 in 1. 1 double crochet. This is the second time. Continue to repeat the stitch pattern inside the parentheses afterward. Complete the required number of repetitions. After finishing all, join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. Round 4 is completed. Move on to round 5. Work even for this round. Chain 2 to begin. Pick up stitches 1 stitch to another and work double crochets. Check the stitch count after completing. It should match the stitch count of the previous round. Then join with a slip stitch at the marked position afterward. Pull tight. Round 5 is completed. For the remaining part afterward, work back and forth in rows, meaning no need to join with a slip stitch at the end. Continue the sequence numbers from before. Next we'll be working row 6. Chain 2 as beginning chain. Here the beginning chain corresponds to the previous round's beginning chain. The chart shows turn afterward, meaning you need to turn the fabric. Turn counterclockwise. Then pick up stitches to the left. Work the corresponding amount of double crochets. Continue all the way down to before the previous round's beginning chain position, which is the position marked by the stitch marker. Finish marking the position. This row is now complete. No need to join with a slip stitch. This creates an opening at both ends. Row 6 is now done. You can remove the stitch marker here. Now work on row 7. Using the same method, chain 2 as beginning chain. Then turn the fabric. Start from the edge stitch of the first row. Work a double crochet into each stitch in sequence. Continue crocheting until next to the beginning chain of the previous row, right before the opening. When reaching the beginning chain of the previous row, no need to crochet. The stitch count for this row matches the previous row. Row 7 is now completed. For the remaining rows, continue crocheting using the same method as row 7. Switch colors during the last few rows. When counting row numbers or round numbers here, count each raised texture one by one. Each raised texture represents one round or row. The swatch currently has 7 raised textures. When encountering insufficient yarn while crocheting, I'll demonstrate the method using the swatch. Pay attention, always join yarn on the double crochet. First work an incomplete double crochet. Yarn over the hook once. Insert the hook. Yarn over and pull through. Yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops. 2 loops remain. That's an incomplete double crochet. Then take the new yarn. Leave a little yarn tail. Yarn over and pull through. Completed the double crochet, also completed joining the yarn. Tie a knot to secure both yarn tails on the wrong side of the fabric. Leave the yarn tails on the wrong side of the fabric for now. Continue crocheting normally. That's the method for joining yarn. Now I'll demonstrate the color change method using a swatch. After completing the rows of the corresponding color, chain 1 to secure. Leave a little yarn tail. Cut the yarn. Then take the new color. Place the yarn tail from the end of the previous row on the right side. Then insert the hook into 1 stitch along the edge. Hang the new yarn on your left hand. Leave a little yarn tail. Yarn over and pull through. Chain 2 to begin. Crochet accordingly downward. While crocheting, you can place both yarn tails above the hook. Weave in the ends as you go along. Or you can tie a knot and leave it in place, then hide it into the fabric later. That's the method for changing colors. Cut the yarn after completing all the work, then weave in the yarn tail into the fabric. Here I'll demonstrate the method of weaving in ends. Place the yarn on the wrong side of the fabric. Weave it in along the stitch pattern. You can weave in for several stitches. Trim the remaining yarn tail. Process the rest of the yarn tails using the same method. Now the crocheting method for the main part is explained. Next, I'll use the original yarn. Let me explain some things to pay attention to while crocheting. First is the cast on. The yarn is hard to see here. Pay more attention while you're crocheting. Crochet slower. First follow the method demonstrated earlier with cotton yarn. Chain cast on. Then make 3 chains. After completing the first stitch, you can feel it. The loop below on your hook is the first chain stitch. Feel it with your hands, there's a small hole. Place a stitch marker on the first stitch. We'll put it directly into the hole. Continue crocheting chains. 2 chains. 3 chains. Let's feel the chain stitches again. When you feel them continuously, there's a bump between every 2 chain stitches. The indented hole position is where the chain stitch is. The starting chain is now complete. Next, pick up the small hole position of the first chain stitch. Crochet 12 double crochets. Since it's hard to find the stitch later, we need to mark every stitch here. First, place a stitch marker on the loop on your hook. Insert a stitch marker here. To make it convenient to distinguish the marker spot on our first stitch marker, add another stitch marker. The stitch position with 2 stitch markers is the first stitch. Pick down to the stitch marker at the first chain. Work 1 double crochet. When crocheting here, you can feel and crochet at the same time. Crochet slower, yarn over. Insert. Yarn over and pull through. If you want to make it looser here, you can enlarge the loop. Conversely, pull the yarn shorter. You can look or feel it. There are 3 loops on the hook. Then yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops. Two loops remain. Yarn over and draw through in once. This completes 1 double crochet. At this point, the position marked by the stitch marker is the stitch of this double crochet. Feel the marked position with your hands. It's a small dent. The lower left of the dent feels firm. This is the post of the double crochet. The upper right feels softer. This is the double crochet stitch. Place a stitch marker on the loop on the hook. Then in the same insertion point, make 1 double crochet. Before each stitch going forward, place a stitch marker on the entire loop on the hook. The second marker position is the stitch of the second double crochet. Continue to complete the remaining stitches. Now there are 3 stitch markers. That means 3 double crochets have been made. After completing, check the stitch count. Simply count the number of stitch markers here. The first stitch is between the 2 marker spots. Then remove the stitch marker from the previous insertion point. At this point, the stitch pattern in the chart is finished. Down to the position with 2 stitch markers. Join with a slip stitch. Insert into the chain space of the marker. Insert hook and crochet. After completing, pull tight. At this point, the first round is complete. To make it convenient for checking the round count later, place a stitch marker in any stitch on this side. Continue crocheting the second round. First, chain 2 as beginning chain. Then at the position below with 2 stitch markers. Work DC 2 in 1. This round still requires marking every stitch. Place 2 stitch markers at the first stitch position. Crochet accordingly. Complete the corresponding position of the stitch marker. The stitch marker below can be removed. Downward, pick up the stitch marker positions from the previous round. Evenly work DC2 in 1. When reaching the position with 2 stitch markers, check the stitch count now. The stitch count in the chart is complete. Then at the first stitch, which is the position with 2 stitch markers, join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. This completes round 2. Similarly, mark any one stitch in this round. You can feel it here. You can mark one stitch above the corresponding position of the previous round's marker, convenient for later checking. For round 3 and onwards, use the same method. After completing the turning chain, follow the chart to crochet the corresponding stitches. Place 2 stitch markers at the first stitch position. Place 1 stitch marker after each stitch thereafter. Below, after completing one corresponding stitch, you can remove the stitch marker after finishing. Once you're more experienced with crocheting, you don't need to mark every stitch. For example, mark every 3rd stitch, or mark every 5th stitch. Here I'll demonstrate round 3, using the method of marking every 5th stitch. First make the turning chain. Then follow the chart to crochet 4 stitches. Still place 2 markers at the first stitch position. Number 4 stitches are completed. Mark the 5th stitch position below. Continue using the same method afterward. Crochet 4 stitches done. Note that the stitch just completed is the 5th stitch position. Crochet 4 stitches from this stitch. Mark the next stitch after completing. Left side of the previous stitch marker to the current marker position. That's 5 stitches. You can also feel it or part the fibers. You'll see a general braid pattern. Continue crocheting using this method. Also, if the previously completed stitch techniques. If you're unsure what stitch was crocheted, you can feel it. Only one firm stitch, which is the stitch post. That means one stitch was crocheted. Below, in one chain space, pulling through to create 2 stitch posts. That's an increase. After finishing the last stitch marker of the previous round, remove the stitch marker. Down to the first stitch 2 stitch marker positions. Let's check the stitch count now. Starting from the second stitch marker on the left side, there are 5 stitches between markers. Let's count the number of stitch markers. There are 7 stitch markers here. That means up to this marker position, there are a total of 35 stitches, plus the last crocheted stitch. making a total of 36 stitches. Match the stitch count with the chart. Finally, at the 2 stitch marker positions. Which is the first stitch? Join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The third round is complete. Mark each completed round afterward. Similarly, mark above the previous marker position. If stitch markers run out later, use other colors for marking. Cut a piece of yarn. Then from the position that needs marking, pick up approximately 1 corresponding stitch. Draw the yarn through. Then tie a knot with the yarn tail. This is the method of marking with yarn tails. For the 4th round afterward, you can crochet following the 3rd round's marking method. If you really can't find the exact position, we can work within a specific area. Crochet the corresponding number of stitches. It's okay if the insertion point is slightly off within the corresponding area. Here I'll demonstrate the method using the 4th round. First, make a beginning chain. In the previous round, there were 5 stitches between my stitch markers. So I just need to pick 5 insertion points between them. Refer to the chart for the stitch pattern. Complete this area first. Meanwhile, during this round of crocheting, you should still mark every 3 or 5 stitches. I'm still crocheting by marking every 5 stitches. First, work 1 double crochet. The first stitch should always be marked, and it's distinguished with 2 stitch markers. Then work 1 double crochet 2 in 1. Insert the hook into the small hole here. Pay attention to the small hole near the fabric's edge. Part the fibers to check. You can faintly see a braid-like texture. Continue working 1 double crochet downward. Then mark it. Work 1 double crochet adjacent. When you reach the stitch marker position later, correspondingly make a double crochet increase here. In this end area, Insert the hook into 5 stitch positions. Then repeat this process afterward. Continue crocheting. Insert the hook into roughly corresponding small holes. When counting stitches, you can also check by feeling the small holes. Take it slow while crocheting. The insertion points can roughly correspond. Complete the corresponding number of stitches. Now you've reached the starting position. Let's check it. If you make a mistake in stitch techniques while crocheting, it's okay, as long as the final stitch count matches the total stitches. Work a slip stitch at the beginning position going down. Pull tight. The 4th round is completed. Once you're skilled at crocheting, you can also feel it. The fabric will have a bumpy texture. The raised parts that feel firm indicate a round. The dents are the holes. We can also count the holes. One hole represents 1 round. Since every iron's tension varies, check the dimensions against the chart after finishing the 4th round. If the dimensions differ significantly, it's recommended to adjust your tension and recrochet. For the 5th round, work even without increasing or decreasing. This ensures the stitch markers align perfectly between the 2 rounds. Then follow the back and forth method, also working even without increases or decreases. You can mark the first stitch of every row and every round. When crocheting back and forth, end at the first stitch marked in the previous row, indicating the completion of a row. When the yarn runs out while crocheting, you can join yarn using an incomplete stitch. The method is identical to the cotton yarn demonstration. When changing colors, follow the color change method shown with cotton yarn. Finally, cut the yarn after completing the work, and weave in all yarn tails to the wrong side of the fabric. This concludes the crocheting method for the original yarn. At this point, the main part is completely explained. Next, make the decorations. Divide into pom-poms, hanging loop and ears. Make and attach separately. First make the pom-poms. using foundation chain to start, then crocheting in rounds. New stitch techniques used: X for single crochet, V for single crochet increase, A for single crochet decrease. Now watch my demonstration. For easier viewing here, I'm still using cotton yarn for demonstration. Everyone can learn the method first, then use corresponding yarn to crochet. First chain to start. Cast on 2 stitches. Mark after completing the first stitch. For original yarn, just mark the chain space. Continue with one more stitch. Starting chain completed, then insert hook into second to last stitch. Which is the marked stitch? Correspondingly make 6 single crochets. First, make the first single crochet. Before crocheting, place a stitch marker through the entire loop. Then insert the hook. Yarn over and draw through. Now there are 2 loops on your hook. Then yarn over and draw through all loops on the hook in once. This is a single crochet. The braid on the upper right is its stitch, and also the position marked by the stitch marker. I'll demonstrate again. If you can't find the right spot with the original yarn, mark every stitch. Same as placing a marker through the loop before crocheting. I'm using cotton yarn for crocheting here. Makes it easier to see the stitch positions, so I only mark the first stitch, won't mark the rest, depends on your situation. Insert into the previous stitch's insertion point. Yarn over and pull through. Then yarn over and pull through both loops on the hook. Complete the single crochet. Continue with 4 single crochets. Check the stitch count after completing. With the original yarn, feel for the small hole. Then at the first stitch's marker position, join with a slip stitch. You can remove the stitch marker from the previous insertion point here. Pull tight. Same ending slip stitch isn't shown in the chart. When crocheting in rounds, always finish by joining with a slip stitch. Pull tight after completing. The first round is complete. When using the original yarn to crochet, remember to mark after each round is completed. Convenient for checking the number of rounds later. Move on to crochet the second round. Make 1 chain as your beginning chain. This beginning chain isn't shown in the chart. When crocheting single crochets in rounds, always start with 1 chain as the beginning chain. Then pick up the stitch marker position. Work a single crochet increase, which means making 2 single crochets in the same stitch. Remember to mark before crocheting. When using the original yarn, depending on the situation, you can mark every single stitch, or mark every 3 or 5 stitches. Choose according to your actual situation. When marking the first stitch, you still need to use 2 stitch markers. For easy identification, I'm still only marking on the first stitch here. One stitch. 2 stitches. Complete the single crochet increase. Continue picking up stitches downward. Work 5 single crochet increases evenly. Check the stitch count after completion. Then pick up the first stitch position, and join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The second round is complete. Continue to crochet the third round. Make one beginning chain to start. Then work one single crochet correspondingly. Followed by one single crochet increase. Now complete one group of stitch patterns in parentheses. Continue crocheting with this method. Finally join with a slip stitch on the first stitch. Pull tight. The third round is complete. For the following 4th to 5th rounds, the chart shows even 1/8x, meaning one stitch corresponds to one single crochet, a total of 18 stitches. Make one beginning chain to start. Then pick up stitches evenly to work single crochets. Check the stitch count after completing. Then pick up the first stitch and join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The 4th round is complete. For the following 5th round, the method is identical to the 4th round. Work evenly. Please refer to the chart for crocheting. Pay attention to make a beginning chain at the start. Finish with a slip stitch at the end. After completion, proceed to the 6th round. Here I'll demonstrate using this swatch. Start by making a beginning chain, then work one single crochet. Then work a single crochet decrease. First insert into the adjacent stitch to make an incomplete single crochet. Insert. Yarn over and draw through. 2 loops remain on the hook. This is an incomplete single crochet. Continue with an adjacent incomplete single crochet. Insert, yarn over and draw through. Now 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and draw through all loops in once. Complete the single crochet decrease. Then work one single crochet. Complete the stitch pattern in parentheses. Continue down with one single crochet. Work a single crochet decrease on adjacent stitches. First insert into 2 adjacent stitches. Make an incomplete single crochet. 1, 2. Finally yarn over and draw through all loops on the hook in once. Complete the single crochet decrease. Then work one single crochet. Another group completed. Repeat this process. Continue crocheting. Finish the last stitch. Join with a slip stitch in the first stitch. Pull tight. The 6th round is completed. The rest continue following the chart. After completing the second to last round, stuff a little fiber fill inside. I'll demonstrate this method using a swatch. First fluff up the fiber fill before stuffing. Adjust the amount as needed. Too much will make it stiff. Too little won't hold shape. Then continue with the final round. When complete, cut the yarn leaving a sewing tail. Secure with one chain stitch. Then leave a 10 cm yarn tail. Cut the yarn. Pull tight. Whenever you need to leave a yarn tail at the end, repeat this process. That concludes the crocheting demonstration for the pom-pom. Simply crochet another pom-pom using the same method. Next, crochet the hanging loop. Use the method of holding 2 strands to make chain stitches. I'll still demonstrate using cotton yarn. You'll need 2 yarn tails for crocheting. A yarn ball has 2 yarn tails, one on the surface, one in the center. Pick up both yarn tails. Then leave about 15 centimeters. Join the strands and make a slip knot. Place it on the crochet hook. Next, hang one strand with your left hand. Lay the other strand over the hook from bottom to top. Yarn over and pull through. Continue to lay the lower strand over the hook. Then yarn over and pull through. After that, repeat this process. I'll work a few more stitches. This is the method for hanging yarn and crocheting chain stitches. Continue downward using this technique. Crochet to the length indicated on the chart. Once the proper length is reached, leave a 15 cm yarn tail and cut the yarn. Then pull the loop on the hook through. Tie the 2 yarn tails together to secure. This completes the hanging loop crocheting. Attach the hanging loop to the main part of the hat. Use the reserved yarn tail from the hanging loop. Tie a knot at the 2 pointed ends of the hat. You can use either a crochet hook or sewing needle. Pull out one of the reserved yarn tails using the hook. Then tie a double knot with the yarn tail. Weave in the yarn for several stitches within the fabric. Simply weave through the chain spaces near the hanging loop. Repeat this process to weave in the other yarn tail. Complete this part on your own. That concludes the hanging loop attachment instructions. Next, attach a pom-pom to the other end of the hanging loop. Use the reserved yarn from the pom-pom. Sew through the hanging loop area for several stitches to secure. Simultaneously sew close the opening of the pom-pom. No specific method required. Just make it secure and neat. The yarn tail from the hanging loop can be threaded into the pom-pom. Fasten off and weave in the ends neatly. Trim any remaining tails. That completes one pom-pom installation. Install the other one using the same method. Complete this part on your own. Next, crochet the ears. There are 2 total, divided into inner ear and outer ear. Crochet them separately first. Assemble them together after completion. The outer ear crocheting method is similar to the pom-pom, just with slightly different stitch count and rounds. Simply follow the pattern chart for crocheting. Finish crocheting and leave a 30 cm yarn tail for sewing. Moving on to the inner ear. Here use cotton yarn for crocheting. Begin with a magic ring, then work back and forth in rows. Also use X-stitch single crochet technique here. Please watch my demonstration. Start with a magic ring. For easier viewing, I'll demonstrate with a different color. Pick up the yarn with your right hand, wrap around left index finger twice. Pinch the crossing point of the loop. Take the loop. Then hang the yarn properly. Transfer the loop between left thumb and middle finger. Pick up the crochet hook with your right hand. Insert the hook into the loop. Yarn over and pull through. Chain 1 to secure. This completes the magic ring. Now work the first round. Make 1 beginning chain to start. Then pick up the stitch loop to crochet X-stitch single crochet. Insert the hook into the loop. Place the hook above the yarn. Then draw the yarn through. Yarn over and draw through both loops on the hook. Complete 1 X-stitch single crochet. Let me demonstrate again. Insert the hook into the loop. Hook above the yarn. Pull the yarn through. Yarn over and draw through all loops in once. Completed another X-stitch single crochet. Continue to pick up stitch loops, and crochet 2 X-stitch single crochets downward. The entire inner ear uses the X-stitch single crochet technique. From now on I'll simply refer to it as single crochet. Continue, 1 stitch. 2 stitches. Complete and close the ring. First gently pull the starting tail. You can see 1 loop moving. Then at the end of the starting yarn tail, pull the moving loop outward. Now only 1 loop remains. Tighten the starting tail. This way the ring is closed properly. No slip stitch needed to finish here. Now the first row is completed. Next crochet the second row. Make 1 chain as your beginning chain, then turn the fabric. Pick up stitches from the previous row, work single crochet increases correspondingly, meaning 2 X-stitch single crochets in one position. When crocheting on the wrong side, the stitches are located at the top left. Continue crocheting this row all the way down. Complete the last single crochet increase. Check the stitch count. Second row completed. Next crochet the third row, make 1 chain as your beginning chain. Turn the fabric. Then work 1 single crochet. Work 1 single crochet increase in the adjacent stitch. Complete the stitch pattern inside the parentheses. Continue crocheting the remaining rows according to the chart. Finish the last stitch. Third row completed. For the remaining rows, simply follow the pattern chart. Each row begins with a chain stitch. Then turn the fabric. Complete the corresponding stitch pattern from the chart. After finishing crocheting, leave a 40 cm yarn tail for sewing. Now the crocheting of the inner ear is explained. Completed crocheting the inner and outer ears. Proceed to assembly. Here, I'm demonstrating with a small swatch. Position the inner ear with the blurry texture side facing forward. Tuck the starting tail behind. Then pick up the outer ear. Fold it in half along the yarn tail. Place the inner ear slightly below center on the outer ear. Align the edges with the opening of the outer ear. Then move it up slightly. Then use the reserved yarn from the inner ear. Sew together by picking up the edges. There's no specific sewing method required here, just make it securely. Thread the needle. Pay attention not to sew into the back of the outer ear. After completing, tie several knots. Then weave in the tail into the fabric. You can weave in a few more stitches. And that completes a full ear. Using the same method, make another ear. Complete it on your own. Now proceed with the assembly. First check the attachment position. Place the split side of the hat main part at the back. Then align the front without the split. Fold the hat in half. At the centered position of the folded edge. Attach the ears horizontally above. Note that the inner side of the ear faces forward. You can adjust the attachment position according to your preference. Find the right spot, sew downward from there. I'll use this swatch for demonstration. My swatch placement is random, mainly demonstrating the method. Use the reserved yarn. Pick up the opening of the ear where it matches the main part. Roughly match and sew together. There's no specific method required, just make it secure. Thread the needle. Pay attention not to sew into the back of the hat main part. Tie a knot after completing. Then weave in the yarn into the fabric. You can weave in a few more stitches. This way one ear is attached. Attach the other ear using the same method, symmetrically. You can complete it on your own. That concludes the decoration section. Finally, let's tidy up the hat. During the process, some fibers may get trapped underneath the fabric. We can brush the fibers with a brush. Pick out the fibers pressed underneath. Don't brush too hard, just gently lift the fibers. You can also use a crochet hook or sewing needle to pick the fibers. As long as the final effect looks pleasing, up to this point, the entire hat making process is now complete. If you have any unclear parts during the crocheting process, don't hesitate to join our Facebook group to get supports. Susan's Family, supporting your handwork experience, sharing the joy of life. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.